David, whilst we've been videoing, we've had a request. We've had about 500 requests, but one that stood out this morning was from Matt Doyle. And it's a great question. He asked, what is holistic management?
Right.
Because it's what you're practicing.
Yeah,
It'd be great to clear it up.
Yeah, we're trying to manage holistically. Yeah, I think a lot of people are a bit worried about the words holistic management because it sounds like a bit of a cult or a movement. But basically what it is it's people that have got disaffected at the modern version of agriculture that they've been practicing and finding it hard to make regular profits and just having their costs out of control. And that's certainly what we were feeling, and we were looking around for another way of doing things that got away from the predominantly economic relationship we were having with the land. So we're looking at the land as a way to generate some cash to make our business a profitable business. And we're struggling with that really, and we weren't that happy with a lot of the things we were having to do with chemicals and fertilisers and what have you. So we started looking around, and I stumbled across Alan Savory's work. He's the guy that did the thinking on managing holistically, and a very cut down description of quite a big book if you want to read it all, but I'm going to try and do it in a minute and a half. But so basically what it is it has a people component, a business component, and a landscape component. And nobody tells you what to do. You absolutely work it out for yourself, and you describe what you want, having learnt a few things. You describe how you want to live based on your values. And we all have, it's quite a hard thing to write down, but we all have values, and we all mostly behave in a way that doesn't violate the values that we have. So how do you want to live based on your values? What do you need to produce to allow you to live like that? And that can be anything. You know, once upon a time, if you'd asked me, you know, what do you do? I would have said, well, I'm a medium wool producer, got a self-replacing flock, and we're trying to grow more wheat than our neighbours. That's what I would have said. But when you get to what is it you need to produce to allow you to live like you've described, it's what we say in our goal. This is the production part of the goal. Is we want to make a profit out of plants and animals. We want to produce time for recreation, and we want to produce habitat for other species. Now they're things that are very worthy for the landscape, but they're also good for us. And we've found that behaving in that different way and allowing other species to come in has been incredibly calming, particularly when the weather turns against you in agriculture. We used to feel very much under threat when it got very dry, and now we have a really simple way of planting so that we don't ever have to lose ground cover. So that's the production bit, and then the landscape. What's the future landscape that you have to allow this production and the way you want to live to go on into the long distant future not without degrading the land, but actually letting the land recover and be more diverse and resilient. So once you put those three things down, it's quite hard to write it down. Everyone in the business needs to have input. But once you do that, then you start, a lot of the tools that you have to create this landscape you've described. If you're in a grazing business, mostly a lot of it's around grazing, and so to allow plants to fully recover between grazings, generally you find you need more paddock divisions. Now we did have 26 paddocks 17, 18 years ago, and now we've got 94. We did most of that in about 3 years. I did it pretty much myself, and so the reason you need more paddock divisions is because you need to have enough time for the plants to fully recover, and you can't do that if you don't have a few more paddocks. So I really can't get into too much more detail there. Maybe if we do something later, we could probably get into some detail about the other tools I can briefly mention a couple of the tools. There's rest. You can rest land. That's okay as long as you don't do it for too long. If you take animals off land and leave them off it, you'll gradually lose species over time. So you need to have the disturbance of grazing to keep the landscape healthy. There's a really symbiotic relationship between the animals and the plants, and the four things that you're trying to impact in a positive way are the water cycle, the mineral cycle, community dynamics, which is the change of species that naturally occurs when conditions alter, and the harvest of solar energy. Now the water cycle and the harvesting of solar energy are two free resources. We don't have to pay for them, but we can manage them so that the landscape gets an advantage. And we've found that if you manage for an increasingly diverse landscape, that's actually very good for your business because your costs are just so low. So yeah, that's a bit of a nutshell version of holistic management.
David, I reckon that's a cracking definition. So can I suggest anyone who's watching this, go and share it with your farmer friends or anyone you think that might have asked you what holistic management is, whether you're doing that currently or thinking about it. It's really good information to share, and David's doing it in spades here. So thanks for clarifying.
Just one more thing that I would mention is that I certainly found myself, modern agriculture is pretty complex. We were doing quite a bit of cropping. It's very complex. We paid agronomists. I was in a little agronomy group, and we had extremely good agronomists that we employed to help us.
Is it top croppers? Is that what we were called?
No, they were just private agronomists.
Oh, okay.
And they were excellent agronomists for that world. But what's happening there, I'm not saying anything against these agronomists. They're for what they do, they're wonderful. But we felt like we were abdicating the thinking to someone else, and they didn't know what we really wanted. So what managing holistically does is it puts you back in the driver's seat, and you're making decisions in the landscape that are towards what you want for your family, your business, and the future landscape. That is an incredibly empowering thing, but it's hard work as well, because you've got to do all the thinking. You can't ring someone up and say, what do I do? When you can ring up other people who are doing it and say, well, how did you approach this? But really it's up to you how you approach it towards what you want.
So the onus is back on the responsibility is back on the landholder and the steward of that land, and that's a wonderful thing.
It is, but you generally find that we always used to think our business was cropping and livestock, and it is. It's not cropping anymore, but certainly livestock. It's part of our business. But the thing that makes that possible is the plants, and you find your mind switching on to the plant community more so than the livestock, because if you get the plant community right, the livestock will just fall into place.
We might leave it there, David.
Yeah, I think so.
We might have to make it part 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Yeah, I know.
There's a whole course in that.
Are there copywriting issues with the Savory Centre?
Oh, it's our own breed of HM.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.